Good evening. They are the people who are supposed to protect us, the people we are supposed to be able to rely on when we are at our most vulnerable. But perhaps the most worrying admission the Metropolitan Police have made in the aftermath of the Casey report is that right now there are hundreds of people in the organisation, many of them serving police officers, who shouldn't be there. Individuals suspected of serious crimes remain on the force. And there's more disturbing evidence of the Met's continuing failure to police itself. Nearly 30 years after the botched investigation into the murder of Stephen Lawrence, Baroness Casey said the Met's system for dealing with internal misconduct is still marked by racial bias. Simon Harris reports.
Scotland Yard was once a beacon of policing excellence. Its reputation for crime fighting circled the globe. But today its latest commissioner was forced into a shameful confession.
We have hundreds of people in this organisation that I need to be going after and getting out of the organisation.
Baroness Casey's report into the Met's misconduct procedures found 20% of those accused between 2013 and 2022 were repeat offenders. But fewer than 1% were sacked. And there was clear racial discrimination. Black police officers and staff were 81% more likely than white colleagues to have cases against them. Almost 24 years have passed since Sir William Macpherson produced this damning assessment of London's police force. His inquiry into the murder of Stephen Lawrence concluded that the Met was institutionally racist. Today's findings suggest a shocking lack of progress since Sir William's landmark report in 1999.
The internal misconduct system has very, very clearly got racial bias within it. And if you were to ask me, is that racial bias an example of Macpherson's institutional racism? The answer is yes, it is.
It was after Wayne Couzens, a serving police officer, was jailed for the murder of Sarah Everard that Baroness Casey was asked to investigate the Met's culture. Other scandals eroded public confidence in the force. When Bieber Henry and Nicole Smallman were murdered in a park in North London, two police officers took selfies next to the sisters' bodies. And an investigation into behaviour at Charing Cross Police Station uncovered widespread racism, sexism, homophobia and bullying. In August, Ricardo dos Santos, a Portuguese athlete, was in his car when he was pulled over by police for the third time. He's going to judge the new commissioner on results.
He comes in with all these promises, and I feel like they're just empty promises. And until I see action, you know, even today he said that there's so many officers who shouldn't be in the force. Rather than say it, fire them.
One officer who was fired was Dame Cressida Dick, the Met's first woman commissioner, after London's mayor lost confidence in her. Sir Mark Rowley, who replaced her, has only been in the job a matter of weeks.
There's some systemic failings here which are embarrassing and make you angry as a police leader. But I came back to policing after 4 years out because I really care about it and I want to make a difference, and I know the men and women in this organisation do. And with their commitment, I'm optimistic we will succeed.
How long's he got?
I think one of the things that Dame Louise Casey advises is don't rush in relation to making the change you've got to do. I've said to Sir Mark, and he's accepted this, he's got to make sure that all the recommendations from Dame Louise Casey are taken on board. He's going to do so. He's already in his first 5 weeks shown he wants to be a reforming commissioner. He's got to be given time.
This was an interim report into the Met's culture and standards. Baroness Casey's full findings will come later. Simon Harris, ITV News.
The delayed Elizabeth Line station at Bond Street will finally open its doors on Monday. The station, which has caused problems for the project as far back as 2014, completes the central section of the line. It means from next month you'll be able to get from the heart of the West End to Whitechapel in just 11 minutes. Here's our political correspondent, Simon Harris.
For 5 months, Bond Street has been a ghost station. Trains speed past the platforms without stopping. But next week, commuters and shoppers will finally get to use a station described by Elizabeth Line bosses as the jewel in the crown.
It's absolutely phenomenal, light, airy, it's a beautiful station.
As Crossrail's delivery director, Kim was responsible for making sure the station is ready.
People are going to come down those escalators, and remember we've got the second longest escalator on the network, second to Angel, here, and they're going to come down those escalators and they're going to be absolutely wowed by what they see.
The decision to rename Crossrail the Elizabeth Line was taken in 2016 when the Queen visited Bond Street, then a building site. Fast forward 6 years, and in May she was able to formally open the railway named in her honour. Today, London's mayor was given a guided tour of Bond Street, a station which should be a shot in the arm for West End businesses.
And this will transform the transport links, public transport links, to this part of the city. This is a station that is stylish, that is spacious, that is step-free. And as we approach this golden quarter, when many shops make most of their money, it's really important to have that lift. And the opening of this station will give them that lift.
We're already seeing people flood to the railway, about 200,000 users a day through the middle section. Already, since the Queen opened the line in May of 2022, we've seen 26 million riders flock to this beautiful new world-class railway.
The Elizabeth line cost £19 billion, £4 billion more than expected. It missed its target opening date by years, not months. Like every other part of the Elizabeth line, Bond Street was supposed to open 4 years ago. When it finally does on Monday, it will be an important milestone, but not quite the end of the Crossrail journey. Next month, the line will open on Sundays, but it won't be until May 2023 that trains from Essex and Berkshire will run from one end of the line to the other. Only then will it be job done. Simon Harris, ITV News, Bond Street.
Now, some breaking news in the last few moments. It's been announced that Grant Shapps has taken over as Home Secretary. Suella Braverman resigned earlier after sending an official document to a colleague using her personal email. Our political correspondent Simon Harris is here with me now. Simon, another extraordinary afternoon in Westminster.
Yes, and a remarkable turnaround in fortunes for the MP for Welling and Hatfield, the former Transport Secretary. Barely 6 weeks ago, Liz Truss sacked him from the Cabinet, saying that although he was probably the best media communicator in government, because he hadn't backed her leadership contest, her leadership campaign, there was no room for him at the inn. He said he'd become a strong, independent voice on the back benches. Well, now he's not only back in government, but he's got one of the most senior jobs, Home Secretary, after Suella Braverman was forced to resign for sending that email from her personal account in breach of government rules. Now, we don't yet know what Mr Shapps is going to do about Home Office policy, in particular the Rwanda extradition plan. He's a centrist, he's not a right-winger. He has a reputation for playing hardball. Remember, he was involved in a long-running wrangle with the mayor over funding for TfL, and he refused famously to meet the rail unions to try to sort out the train and tube disputes. But at the moment, here we are, an extraordinary situation. After yet another U-turn by Liz Truss, Grant Shapps is back in government.
And does this pile even more pressure on Liz Truss?
She's under immense pressure, and even now it's reported that Mr Shapps and the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are involved in talks about how the Home Office is going to be run. It seems that Liz Truss hasn't got any say in that. She at the moment is in a very, very precarious situation.
And this evening there's that controversial fracking vote, isn't there? So we'll keep an eye on that on the national news, I'm sure. Simon, thank you very much. Good evening. In a week or so, Liz Truss will be going home to Greenwich, having resigned as party leader, making her Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister. In her speech, she said that she recognised she could no longer deliver the mandate on which she was elected by her party. The Eltham MP, Clive Efford, is among those calling for a general election. For now, though, we have another Tory leadership race. Already, colleagues are jostling to replace Liz Truss. Among them, if you believe the buzz, one Boris Johnson. Before more on that, our political correspondent Simon Harris on Truss's 45 days in office and what the chaos means for the capital.
Boris Johnson's eviction from Downing Street 6 weeks ago was meant to usher in a new era of stability. At least that's what the Conservatives hoped. But today his successor conceded the game was up.
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
When Liz Truss moved to number 10 from her home in Greenwich, few could have predicted the speed with which it would all unravel. She chose her close friend Kwasi Kwarteng, the MP for Spelthorne, to turbocharge Britain's economy as Chancellor. But his mini-budget spooked the markets and forced the PM into humiliating tax U-turns. Last week, their partnership crashed and burned, forcing Truss to recruit Jeremy Hunt, another Surrey MP, to take charge at the Treasury. Yesterday in the Commons, the Labour leader was merciless.
A book is being written about the Prime Minister's time in office. Apparently, it's going to be out by Christmas. Is that the release date or the title?
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
Hours later, she was forced to appoint Grant Shapps to her cabinet after the Home Secretary resigned. And then came a fiasco in the voting lobbies over fracking.
This is a disgrace. It is an absolute disgrace. The Conservative Party needs to pull itself together, stop fiddling around with the membership involved in electing our leader. We need to unite behind the best member of Parliament possible.
The turmoil in the financial markets, the threat to mortgages and rising inflation have all contributed to the government's popularity plummeting. Opposition parties want an immediate election.
Well, Liz Truss trashed the British economy with her unfunded tax cuts, and before her, Boris Johnson failed our country with his lies and law-breaking. The Conservative Party have shown they're not fit to govern our great country, and we don't need another Conservative Prime Minister.
I mean, the idea that the Tories can renew themselves while they're in government, I mean, that's what they've just tried to do under Liz Truss, and it's been a disaster for the country. They can't do it again.
As sad as it is that Liz Truss stepped down, we now need to have a leader that can lead the government, that is still there, still has a mandate to deliver for the people.
But if there was an election now, the majority of London's 21 Tory MPs would lose their seats.
The current polls show that if there was a general election today, those 21 Conservative MPs could end up all losing their seats. So that could include Boris Johnson, who might lose his seat over in Uxbridge, and 3 Barnet MPs currently all Conservative.
Thank you.
Even by recent standards, the events of the last 24 hours have been extraordinary.
Simon, who next then through that revolving door in Downing Street?
Well, Duncan, the Tories are going to hold a fresh leadership contest, not as long as the one in the summer. It's all going to be over by next Friday. And at the moment, the front-runners appear to be Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor, and Penny Mordaunt, the leader of the House. But as you suggested, there is possibly one other name in the frame, one Boris Johnson. The former Prime Minister, former Mayor of London, is said to be mulling it over and may even be on his way back to London after breaking off from his Caribbean holiday. Well, this was the reaction from the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer.
He didn't resign because there was some policy conflict. He resigned because his own MPs, his own front bench, were all saying, we will not serve you because you're so unfit to govern. And the idea that we go from the chaos and economic damage of Liz Truss back to a man that his own party said is unfit for office is, I think, another reason why we need a general election.
To make it through to any final shortlist, candidates will need the nomination of at least 100 fellow MPs. The big question tonight is, can Boris Johnson get the support of 100 members of Parliament so soon after they booted him out?
Simon, for now, thank you. Let's return to Simon in Westminster now. And Simon, Liz Truss's time in office was a tricky time for the financial markets, to say the least. What's the reaction been from the city this afternoon?
I think it's fair to say that Liz Truss's growth experiment has gone bang in spectacular fashion. After months of turmoil on the financial markets, there was a positive reaction to her resignation. The value of the pound shot up to $1.13. As one city analyst put it, this was the City of London giving its verdict on the Truss premiership. All eyes are now, of course, on the Tory leadership contest. And the big question is, can the Conservatives unite behind a single candidate to bring some stability both to the financial markets and to politics? Well, the Conservatives think they can, but as far as the opposition parties are concerned, there is another answer: a general election.
Simon Harris in Westminster, thank you very much.